call Free Libya. Taking the fight to the capital would be the next step.
We have a force that can protect Benghazi. The force may use heavy trucks to transport tanks to go to Tripoli and pass through Sirte on the way because it still supports the regime. The power we have is enough. The ammunition, supplies and fuel are also enough. We don't have a problem.
But a tour of this airfield paints a less optimistic picture of what the rebels have at their disposal. Rusting Soviet-era fighter planes that haven't left the tarmac in years. All part of Gaddafi's strategy to prevent the army from ever threatening his rule.
The army was dismantled years ago. The regime is concentrating only on security units.
The victory they're celebrating is incomplete as long as Muammar Gaddafi remains in control of cities in the west. And most Libyans fear he will not be defeated without more bloodshed. Jackie Rowland, Al Jazeera in eastern Libya.
Well, condemnation from outside Libya is mounting. Foreign ministers are in Geneva for a UN Human Rights Council meeting, and they've agreed unanimously on action against Gaddafi.
The international community is speaking with one voice, and our message is unmistakable. These violations of universal rights are unacceptable and will not be tolerated.
We're trying to respond in real time to the crisis and, of course, to avoid the civil war that we fear, and making contingency plans to respond to the potential flow of refugees to neighbouring and to European countries.
Well, Washington is putting financial as well as military pressure on Libya. The U.S. has frozen $30 billion in Libyan government assets, and it's moving its naval and air forces closer to Libya to help enforce any future no-fly zone. John Terrett reports.
After 2 weeks of beating around the bush, the White House came out punching over Libya on Monday. Spokesman Jay Carney says Gaddafi's lost all legitimacy in the eyes of his people and the world and must go.
He is no longer in a position to credibly lead his nation. And he is, in the meantime, inflicting horrific violence on the people he claims to serve and the people he claims love him.
Earlier, President Obama met the UN chief at the White House. On a visit to the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, Ban Ki-moon drew parallels between Libya and the past.
Once again, we are being tested. In Libya, a regime that has lost legitimacy has declared war on its own people. It's up to us, the community of nations, to stand against this crime.
The U.S. ambassador to the UN was less diplomatic about Colonel Gaddafi's latest statements on TV.
It sounds just frankly delusional. And when he can laugh in talking to American and international journalists while he is slaughtering his own people, it only underscores how unfit he is to lead and how disconnected he is from reality.
To enforce sanctions against Libya, the Pentagon is repositioning forces near the North Africa coast as the US and its allies consider options surrounding a possible no-fly zone. The Pentagon doesn't name the assets being redeployed, but they're thought to be the aircraft carrier USS Enterprise and the amphibious assault ship USS Kearsarge, plus the command vessel USS Mount Whitney. Also Monday, the US Treasury froze $30 billion of financial assets controlled by Colonel Gaddafi and his family, held in US banks. The move was described by the White House as the largest single financial freeze in US history. John Terrett, Al Jazeera, Washington.
Well, Venezuela's president has proposed setting up an international commission that would travel to Libya to mediate a peaceful outcome to the ongoing strife. Hugo Chavez has also declared his loyalty to Gaddafi, saying he would not abandon his longtime ally.
Just because everyone says today that Gaddafi is a murderer, then Chavez has to say it too? I'm not convinced. I'm not going to condemn him from afar. That would be cowardly with someone who has been my friend and our friend for a long time without knowing what is happening in Libya. I'm not a coward. I'm not fickle.
Let's get more from Dima Khatib, who joins us now from the Venezuelan capital, Caracas. Dima, did Chavez give any more detail on this proposed mediation mission?
Actually, we haven't got any more details yet, except that I spoke to a government source that said that the government is already taking the initiative of contacting some countries, some leaders in the world, possibly, I don't know, maybe in Latin America or maybe in Africa or maybe in Europe, I'm not really sure, where, you know, they're contacting the leaders, but just sort of exploring which countries might be interested. Chavez said the door is open to any country, friendly country, he said, that would like to participate in the International Commission for Peace in Libya. Now, I'm thinking maybe Chavez is the last person left that could actually convince Muammar Gaddafi of a sort of a compromise, because of this friendship that links between the two men, and because of the way Chavez has proven to Muammar Gaddafi that he's not like the rest of the world, especially Western leaders and even Arab leaders who used to be friends with Gaddafi until the revolution started, and now they've walked out on him. He is not walking out on his friend, and maybe this gives him a bit of an advantage with Gaddafi. Maybe he could, I'm just speculating, maybe he could be the one trying to put him under pressure, convince him to come up with a compromise of some sort. But anyway, we'll be watching the next few hours and the next few days to see who might join this international mediation effort initiated by Chavez, and what it could do really to avoid what Chavez says is a plan by the US to take military action against Libya, to take hold of its oil, just like it did in Iraq.
All right, Dima, thank you. Well, New Zealand came to a standstill on Tuesday as the nation marked exactly a week since a powerful earthquake struck. The city of Christchurch bore the brunt of that disaster, and police say up to 240 people may have been killed. Veronica Pedrosa reports.
A Maori elder calls to welcome the living and mourn the dead. The Prime Minister and top officials bow their heads. Bricks from the ruins of Christchurch symbolise the devastation around them. And New Zealand stopped, a week to the minute since a powerful earthquake. Emergency crews from around the world too silenced their jackhammers. They joined millions of New Zealanders in sombre tribute. 2 minutes of silence to remember the dead and missing. Prime Minister John Keyes called it one of New Zealand's darkest days. The official death toll is still rising.
The number is fluctuating, but the figure that you've quoted of around 240 is solidifying.
A major inquiry has been promised to find out why so many buildings collapsed in Christchurch, a city that was supposed to be quake-proof. The finance ministers warned the earthquake's likely to wipe out any growth in New Zealand's already struggling economy. As if things weren't bad enough, Christchurch is still experiencing violent aftershocks, opening cracks in the ground, threatening to cause landslides and rattling residents' already frayed nerves. Veronica Pedrosa, AlJazeera.
Well, 2 former Blackwater contractors are about to go on trial again in the